It is that time of year. The second round with the Denver Broncos is coming at you. After a game against the Seahawks that the Chiefs actually did what we had hoped they would do, locked down, took care of business. Can they continue that? What are the pitfalls today? With ChiefDigest.com's editor, Matt Derrick, to set us all straight and keep me on the straight and narrow, that's for sure. Welcome today to Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. It's Locked On Chiefs, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day for free, everywhere. Thanks for making us your first listen. Check out another Locked On show for your next podcast of the day. This is our first visit with Matt. How was Christmas? Welcome back. We're almost to the new year. How has your holidays been so far?
Not too bad. Fairly relaxing. Monday was kind of a holiday around our house and everything. So I took a mid-afternoon nap, and that's about the best way to celebrate a holiday to me. So
I think you're winning.
There you go.
A little bit jealous. Hey, there's a lot to be said for that.
and those getting the visual version of the podcast will know I didn't even shave today. So, you're getting scraggly. Mountain man.
Must be on vacation.
Matt Derrick. So, yeah.
I like that. Well, if we take a step back from this ball game, I think what I come away more positive in terms of my outlook is the fact that they took care of business against a team that they needed to. Something that we had questioned in a few weeks before. Are you confident that's something they can repeat? Do you think it was a little bit fluky? And was it more about staying on target for the Kansas City Chiefs, or was it more about not being able to muster much resistance from the Seattle Seahawks?
No, I mean, I think this was the game that the Chiefs fans expected the last couple of weeks against a couple of franchises that were going in the wrong direction. And the Texans, maybe they're just putting up a little more fight than you expected. Hey, they get a win. So, maybe that's a good indication that, hey, they're actually putting up some fight and having their best effort at this time of year. The Broncos, the first round of the Broncos game still kind of perplexes me because that game was just over. I mean, 27-3. It was gone, and there was really no reason for the Broncos to get back in that one. Mm-hmm. So I mean that was the concern there, is that was a Chiefs team that didn't close it out. Well, against Seahawks to close it out. And yeah, I mean, there's some things that I don't know how many, lessons we can take away from it. It was a bit of an odd game in just the weather. I think that definitely affected special teams. I think it definitely affected the passing game. I don't think that was going to make it any closer, though. I mean, if anything, I think it just slowed down the Chiefs' offense a little bit. Seattle probably just kept them in the game. I mean, I think the Chiefs were clearly the better team. They give up a late touchdown. You'd love them to keep the slate clean and not give up that score. But the defense played very well. The offense was efficient. I've got very little critiques or problems with anything in that aspect. This is going to be a different week. I mean, it's going to be a better weather, and you're facing a team that I don't know what's going on the other side of the football, and I don't know if we're going to know until the Broncos show up on Sunday.
Yeah, I have to agree with you, and we'll get into the details of that, folks, because I have a couple of questions, a couple of theories, but just in the fallout of this game against the Seahawks, I think a lot of people's skepticism comes from just how poor that Seahawks team is in that kind of shape right now. But I still feel like that is, regardless of how poor the opponent is playing, that's still something that gives you the opportunity to execute your game plan, to keep things under control, to display your dominance. And even if it is an inferior opponent that's well outclassed, it is, again, something that I think they can build from. It's that feel of, yes, we can keep our foot on the gas. Do you follow that logic as well, or do you think that it was a one game that's got to be isolated from everything else?
No, I don't. I mean, to me, I don't feel like it does have to be taken and isolated. I mean, I think we can look at these games in collection, and I think that we can at least see that if the Chiefs had problems closing out a couple of games, I think we can say, at least against the Seahawks, they closed it out. I have a few quibbles. I mean, I would like to have seen more offense in the second half. They only had one good drive in the second half. And I think we talked about it the other night. I was really surprised that they just didn't try and really establish the run more in the second half, to just run out the clock and see if they can do that. Because in the postseason in January, you're going to need to be able to run the football to put some games away and close them out. And I would like to have seen them do that. They didn't. They kind of, I think that early in the second half, they were coming out trying to expand the lead, and I don't have any issues with that, but they were running the ball pretty effectively and just let it get away from him in the second half. And that's one of the quibbles we've had with this team. So I would have liked to have seen them. I mean, I know it's Chiefs. They're gonna pass 60% of the time and run 40%. This seemed like one of those games you could have gone the other way, though. And I just, that's my only complaint with this team. And the only concern is that, how are they going to close out games when they need to? And I'm just not sure that we've seen them really do that. I mean, if it takes you putting the team down by 24 points to put a game away, then I guess you're going to have to do that. But I think ideally you'd like to be able to, have some 8-minute drives and run the ball and just get the heck out of town.
Well, and in terms of who you rely on that, there's the version of the future where Clyde Edwards-Helaire is back on the active roster. Obviously, we've seen Rojo get a touch, but clearly it's a two-headed monster right now. But they have some interesting options for relief. One that isn't going to be there is Jerry Neely, who was released from the practice squad, but Melvin Gordon is still sitting there. Your reaction to Ely's release and what that means for whether it's Gordon or Rojo or et cetera, and when Clyde returns?
Yeah, not a huge shock with Ely. I was almost surprised that he stuck around after the suspension. I thought there was a chance there that the Chiefs might go ahead and part ways at that point, but they brought him back and wanted to see. And not a real surprise because this time of year, I mean, it's a little bit different with the schedule being the way that it is now. But normally, this is the point in the calendar in which Brett Veach starts to look at players who are getting churned from other teams and other practice squads, and is starting to look for guys that they want to be able to bring onto the practice squad for reserve future deals more than anything else. So probably start to be a few of those moves here in the next couple of weeks. It's kind of what, Brett Veach likes to do is kind of churn over the end of that bottom of that practice squad roster and see what he can find out there.
Yeah, and I think that's smart moves. We'll see what happens. Now, Melvin Gordon just came from the Denver Broncos. There's a couple of news updates, and then we're going to talk about this matchup, what it's looking like, and who may be available. But first, let's take a word from our friends over at Ultimate Football GM, a game that you really need to get in on because it simulates everything that you want from a football franchise, especially for you old school Madden franchise mode guys. Whether it's hiring the right coaches and coordinators, trading players, making draft picks, navigating through free agency, etc. It's all there and it's all challenging in this realistic game world. You can take the Kansas City Chiefs, and Chris has already completed it out, I think, 30 years in the future. So there is a lot to be done here. It's a pretty enthralling game. I think you guys will find it really challenging and really interesting. Our show, our Locked On Chiefs listeners get 100% free boost in their franchise when they use the promo code Locked On. So you want to make sure that that's in all caps, but use that code Locked On. You can see it down here at the bottom of your screen for 100% free boost. And all you got to do to get in on it is go download the game. And that's ultimate-gm.com, or you can look it up on the app stores by the same name. It's ultimate-gm.com and get your fantasy dynasty started today. Now, I'm all for fantasy dynasties. I prefer regular dynasties. And this is interesting because I think this is about the most juxtaposition as we've seen. And for somebody who lives and covers the Chiefs, to live in Broncos country is always kind of fun for me because before the Chiefs had this dominant run of 7 AFC West championships, it was the Broncos on a streak. I believe it was 5. Sorry, Broncos fans, I really don't care. I'm just estimating your number. But the downfall of this franchise has been historic nearly just this season. Obviously, this week, a couple of things have happened. We'll get to who might be on the field back because we just got news tonight. I think, Matt, you just tweeted it out probably. Folks, when you hear Matt's clicking keyboard on the show, it means stuff is happening right as we do this. So make sure that you're checking out the timeline and ChiefsDigest.com where you can find it all. Big news, obviously, is a little bit earlier than Black Monday, which is head chopping across the league for NFL head coaches. It is Nathaniel Hackett that is out as the head coach in Denver, which I actually feel is kind of a negative for the Chiefs in preparing for this team because, follow my logic, maybe I'm overthinking it, but you knew what you had in a dysfunctional Broncos team, that you had to play a little bit more respect than you did to last time. But at least you knew some of the players. Now I think this is almost a reset. This is almost giving a drowning man a life preserver to get a breath. Could this make the Denver Broncos more dangerous this week, in your opinion?
Yeah, I mean, it really is one of those questions about which way this goes, because there's sometimes there, and you've seen it this year. I mean, look at what happened with Carolina with Steve Wilkes getting the interim job. There's oftentimes there can be a boost with a team, because, and especially with a team like the Broncos, because remember this, and I wasn't covering the Chiefs at the time, but being in Kansas City and being familiar with the situation when the Chiefs have had coaching changes, remember when Romeo Crennel came in at the end of the season. There's just such a weight that gets taken off everybody's shoulders. And in Denver, that's particularly the case because you could see it. I mean, I said it when the Chiefs and the Broncos were playing a few weeks ago at 27-3. I thought Chiefs were one score away from the Broncos breaking out fighting on the sidelines amongst each other. And it took 2 more weeks, but they got to that point. And it's not, I mean, I tell people, okay, NFL's not unlike other office places too. And there are days and there are situations when everybody dreads going to work. And I guarantee you right now in Broncos country, every single player and coach and everybody in that organization dreads going to work every day. Well, now you fire Nathaniel Hackett and now everything's lifted. I mean, everybody gets a reset. So yeah, I mean, you do think there's a possibility that everybody's going to get a fresh start. Nobody's going to be, at each other's, necks anymore and throats anymore. And they could just go play football. And they might do some things that are unpredicted, with a new coach. They might do things schematically different. You don't usually see too many dramatic changes because the offense, even the defensive coordinator are still there. Might be some lineup changes. You never know. But just the fact that everybody on that team doesn't have to dread going into work every day is a step in the right direction. So you don't know. And that's why Andy Reid told us on Monday. I mean, he talked to us just a few moments after Denver made this news. You got to be prepared for anything and everything. So that's what the Chiefs have to be prepared for because you don't know what kind of Broncos team is going to be showing up.
I find that interesting in Andy's comments in a number of ways. We'll get to another one another day, but that in particular, that is hopefully reassuring in everyone's eyes. It is a little bit in mind that at least they recognize the fact that this isn't the same sleeping dog that they let creep back in on them last time, and they do have to pay more attention. I still feel that despite what is still a very good defense, we can talk about the Pat Surtain play that didn't happen last time, what can happen this time. There's all kinds of occurrences, but in paying more respect and more attention to the team that you're going to play this week, I feel allows them to stay a little bit sharper than maybe they have against the Texans and against the Broncos last time. Are they capable of that? Or is this still a Broncos team in so much disarray that it's hard to maintain your focus?
Well, there's 2 parts of this game to me. I mean, obviously one is the Broncos themselves. And part of what, their implosion that we saw over the weekend against the Rams, part of that was within themselves, offense versus defense. I mean, we saw that on the sidelines. And the question is, does the coaching change eliminate that? Does everything go away? Or, is that even misdirected anger? Is the fact that, like I said, everybody's going into work miserable and the defense has to blame somebody. So they take it out on the offense because the offense isn't performing. I mean, I don't know if those feelings all of a sudden go away. But if they don't, I mean, to me, the other part of it is just, it's on the Chiefs. I mean, how did that lead evaporate in Denver? It's because they turned the football over. And they didn't, and they did get the 1 turnover, really made the play. But you take away those 3 turnovers, those 3 bad turnovers of Mahomes, and it's a completely different ballgame. So, to me, if the Patrick Mahomes that we've seen the last 2 weeks is playing against Denver this weekend, you're going to have a completely different outcome. Because I don't see that even with the coaching change, Denver's going to be able to come out with a similar energy that they had against the Chiefs a couple of weeks ago, because I think that was their Super Bowl. I don't think they can match it again. But if the Chiefs don't make mistakes, this Denver team's not touching them.
Yeah, emotionally, it's got to be hard to get to that point. And emotion is part of what you want to check out. A message from our newest sponsor, Audible. It is about the emotion. And when you find something you love, you want to hold on to it. And that's why there's a brand new episode of their new show, The League, available as a bonus episode on the Locked On NFL channel. We are partnering with them. And it's a show that brings you a former Super Bowl champion, a legendary smack talker in Richard Sherman, coming together with Taylor Rooks, a voice that you should know by now. And if not, I think you're going to enjoy that. And it's an 8-part docuseries about the most bizarre and inspirational and unlikely stories surrounding pro football. It's worth your time, and I think that you'll enjoy it. Each story offers equal parts of history and entertainment and social commentary, all wrapped up into one bundle. So head on over to Locked On NFL channel, get subscribed, and check out this episode for free. It is called The League, and you can catch the full series on there wherever you get your podcasts from Audible as well. It's available now, and it's Audible doing what they do. Get in the game. Doing what we do is break down possibilities, tendencies, and really how to recognize pieces of the game that might not be so blatant. One thing that we thought wasn't going to happen after the debacle, multiple level meltdown by the Denver Broncos last week. One guy we didn't think we were going to have to face was Randy Gregory, who was facing a suspension for an after-game altercation. That was reversed tonight as we went to record here tonight. That means he's going to be available in all intents and purposes, right, Matt? Other than if this new coaching staff decides to make it a disciplinary action, right?
Yeah, the NFL's reversed the one-game suspensions to both those players. So Randy Gregory did get hit with a $50,000 fine, so there's a little bit of teeth there. But no, he'll be available, and unless, like you said, that Denver has some internal penalties that they decide to hand down. But I would fully expect Randy Greger's probably going to play. So that should be at least one short-term boost to the Broncos there.
Yeah, I have to think so. In terms of matching up with the Kansas City Chiefs, I hope we saw a better play over the last few weeks from Orlando Brown. I think Andrew Wiley's trying to settle in there. We haven't seen much of Lucas Niang, but he's there and available should he be needed. Was Gregory in particular offer in terms of a respite or a ray of hope here in the pass rush for what is still a pretty solid Denver Broncos defense?
Yeah, I mean, and this is, once again, I mean, it's a unit that they saw a couple of weeks ago. So, that whether that helps the offense or the defense, I think is somewhat debatable. But I think it's a good barometer to see about the Chiefs and to see if, one, some of the adjustments that they've been making over the last couple of weeks since that Denver game are going to kick in, to whether, getting a couple of guys a little bit healthier. I mean, Andrew Wiley's getting a little bit more with that elbow, and I know he's getting a little bit more comfortable out there. Everybody's been dealing with some injuries. So I think part of that is just seeing how those guys are feeling and everything. But yeah, I mean, I do think that this is a good measuring stick to see how some of the adjustments that this offensive line's been making of late, because, hey, against some defeated opponents, it looks like it worked, but the Broncos have a pretty decent front four. And they gave this team some challenges a couple of weeks ago. So that, to me, I mean, I want to see it. Now, once again, it's going to stem back to what kind of effort are the Broncos going to bring, and are they going to mix things up? I would expect them to have some new tricks. So, everybody, that's the thing, is that on every NFL team, sure, there are some veterans on that team that probably already in their mind are on a golf course and are ready to get out of there. But there's also a lot of guys who know that these last couple of games for them are critical to getting jobs for next year, whether it's with Denver or with another team. They needed to put some work on tape. So I still expect there to be, like I said, some adjustments. I expect there to be some new tricks, but I also want to see, this is a good way to just see if some of those adjustments the Chiefs made since the Denver game are true, or whether they were just, the mirage of playing some defeated opponents.
I couldn't agree more. There's a couple of cases in particular that I'm looking for. And one of the other altercations that happened on the sideline was with former K-Stater Dalton Reisner, who looks like he's going to be available. We haven't heard anything about disciplinary action for him with that backup quarterback on the sideline and all of that. But it does show that at least Dalton still has some fire. And so I think that's a matchup. They're going to be focusing on trying to slow down Chris Jones again. What that leads me to is, since the last time this team played the Denver Broncos, we've seen George Karlaftis kind of take a step forward, at least in consistency, in finishing his pressures. Something that we talked about all season long, and I go back to his film, folks, when I first did his evaluation. It was always about, can he increase that finish percentage? It looks like it's on. That barometer in particular, and with the attention that I think Reisner and probably the interior three are going to put on Chris Jones, lends me to think that this is not only a barometer, but really a telltale sign for what George Karlaftis has progressed to, because it's a team he's played already. He's obviously improved since then, but where is that? And can he continue to adjust? He's probably my top watch point on the defense for this week. Do you have somebody more important, or do you see something else happening?
To me, it's all the rookies on the defensive side. And I think you singled out one. The other one I think is really important too is going to be Joshua Williams. because that was a kid who, once again, got really picked on by the Broncos, and the Broncos were kind of the ones that started the trend of saying, yeah, this is the weak point in the Chiefs secondary, go after him. And he's had some tough games. I think we've started to see him, however, turn the corner. He's getting that confidence back. I think he's been playing a little bit better. I want to see it. I mean, I expect that once again, the Broncos are going to challenge him. I'd also be interested in seeing if the Chiefs are going to do again what they did with L'Jarius Sneed this past weekend and maybe try and match him up a little bit more with Jerry Jeudy. I'd really be interested in that. So those are the two guys in the secondary that I want to see. But I think you're right. I mean, to me, the rookies and seeing how they perform on the defensive side and how they make adjustments, especially after that last outing, I think with Karlaftis and Williams, those are the two I think really stand out.
See, and this is why the magic happens when you come on the show, because Jerry Jeudy was going to be my last question for you. I think that the travel aspect of letting L'Jarius move all over the field and consequently Trent McDuffie do the same thing in order to compensate for where L'Jarius is, I think that's something that needs to continue. It's great to have it in your bag of tricks and use it once. There's a school of thought that says, okay, we showed that once. We're not going to do it every week. We're going to elevate to what we think is the matchup we have to have it. I'm on the opposite side of the fence where I think I want you to show me every week, and I want you to put on display for teams you're going to face in the playoffs that you're going to get our best guy on your best guy, and we're going to attempt to take him. That's what you need to be scared of. Where do you fall, and where do you think the team falls?
Yeah, to me, it's part of the chess game, because I think Steve Spagnuolo would tell you that, some of it is certainly, that you feel pretty comfortable now at this point in his career with saying to L'Jarius Sneed, you're going to be able to take and handle the toughest guy on the other side of the field. But you also have to think about what does that result in, because the player that it impacts the most is then Trent McDuffie, because McDuffie's the guy who's got to be able to go inside and outside. And one, you got to feel comfortable and make sure that he is comfortable with that he's okay with the last minute switches and switching off and everything. And he's comfortable with those. But then you also think about what that matchup is, because then, that may end up being, if you're going to have L'Jarius travel, well, now Josh Williams, if he's in your third corner, he's probably going to be saying the same receiver all day long. Is that a matchup that he can handle? Or do you want to be able to, have the luxury of, doing some bracket coverage? How do you want to handle it? Because sometimes you may not want to just say, we're going to put this one guy in one-on-one coverage. I mean, against the Bengals, you may want to have to, double up somebody. So in that case, maybe you don't have L'Jarius travel because you want to bracket Jamar Chase. I mean, there's different options, but I think you're right. I mean, to me, L'Jarius has proven he can do it and against a quality receiver like Metcalf. So if he can do it, I say keep going to it. And I'd love to see it against Jeudy, because especially the way that the Chiefs got beat by him a couple of weeks ago, especially in the red zone, I'd like to see them do that. We'll see if they do. But if for no other reason than I think, once again, I mean, I think that, some of your gun guys need a break. And Josh Williams has had some tough matchups, and he's been the guy who has really, suffered the most from having some of the lopsided matchups. I mean, Trent McDuffie hasn't been picked on as much. And, so to me, if you're going to try to continue to protect Josh Williams a little bit, I think you are going to have to ask a little bit more of L'Jarius Sneed.
Yeah, I have to think so as well. And it's not to say that has to be this matchup, because I do think that Jeudy needs a little bit of attention after the last ballgame. But Sutton's no slouch either. Honestly, he's had a down season, but I still think he is one of the elite receivers in this division. And so putting Williams on that may be a mismatch as well. Do you have a gut feel for how this game goes and whether they travel L'Jarius, whether the defense does something different? What's your gut tell you at this point?
Well, I have no gut yet, but I will say this. I mean, and this is just a little insight for fans out there. Great example was last week with Steve Spagnuolo, because if an NFL coach comes out and tells you something, chances are he's telling you the exact opposite of what he's going to do. Because the moment that Steve Spagnuolo came out last Thursday and started talking about DK Metcalf with his shirt off and talking about how great he was and everything, and how, we might have to double that guy. The moment that happened, I thought Steve Spagnuolo was telling us that L'Jarius Sneed is traveling with this guy. And I mean, that's what NFL coaches do. I was having flashbacks to my first season on the beat, 2016. I think I've told you this story before. Yep. And Ben Roethlisberger was on a conference call with the Kansas City reporters and absolutely blew smoke at us about how Marcus Peters is the guy that you have to watch. You cannot go after Marcus Peters. You have to be aware of where he is at all times. And if you remember that primetime game, Big Ben, first play of the game, goes after Marcus Peters and torches him. And that was when I learned that when NFL players and coaches tell you what they're going to do the exact opposite. So that's my absolute complete and total rant in a sideways direction. But back to this game, I will say this, even though I don't have I feel like I don't have a good feel for this game because I guess we've been talking about this entire time. I don't know which Broncos team is showing up. Mm-hmm. I am pretty confident about which Chiefs team is going to show up, though. So I think it's going to be the Patrick Mahomes that's locked on, that's not turning over the football. I think it's going to be the defense that does not want a repeat of what happened a couple of weeks ago. I'm not sure it matters whether the Broncos are rejuvenated and that they've got some new tricks up their sleeve and guys are no longer fighting on the sidelines. I think the Chiefs put them down. So I'm trolling in the area of 31-10 Chiefs. I might change later in the week, but that's where I kind of feel right now.
I like where you're at, and I will be locked on Friday, folks. You can hear my prediction for this game with Chris on our Friday show as we get ready for that game. Matt, thanks for tuning us in to where we're at right now and what we're expecting to see. Appreciate your time tonight.
Always a pleasure. Take care, everybody, and Happy New Year.
Folks, enjoy yourselves. We'll be back with you tomorrow, and then Friday, we'll get you ready for that game. Don't miss it and check out everything at ChiefsDigest.com. Thanks for being here today, and we'll talk to you tomorrow.